How to design your website for a regional market. Web development is a way to ensure that you have a strong presence in the market at all times, but it is also important to keep in mind the fact that in most cases you are going to have to try and localize your website a little bit in order to get in on the various regional markets that you have the potential to tap into. Simple web design for startups might mean that a lot of the regional markets that you could be generating some serious cash flow from would end up being neglected simply because you just don't know how to tackle the problem head-on. The web design tips provided below have been compiled to help you design your website specifically to help it target regional markets. While cheap development may not be possible while you are targeting regional markets because this tends to cost a great deal more money, Web Design UK really needs to start incorporating localized templates and themes so that niches can be targeted. In this stage of capitalist society, this might be the only way that people will be able to actually make money and run profitable companies. Optimize for local culture. Every culture is different. So if you want to make sure that your website is going to work well in a particular regional market, a good idea would be to learn as much as you can about the culture. Text is an important part of web design, and inserting keywords into this text can ensure that you get the maximum amount of traction in the region you are trying to target. This can only be done through in-depth analysis of the sort of culture that you are trying to attract. It also really depends on the sort of products or services you are selling. Are your services designed for a specific type of consumer? For example, certain regions are going to be a lot less receptive to card payments and would prefer cash-on-delivery options. If you are targeting this type of region, then you really need to keep this in mind and incorporate these alternative options into your overall template. Remember that consumers are often very similar to one another as well, so there is no need to create a completely different site for each region. Just try your best to incorporate things into your design that would help other cultures and regions relate to the sort of content that you are trying to push. You also need to keep in mind that a lot of the design cues and overall aesthetics that you apply to your site are pretty much going to stay the same. There is no need to try and fix something if it's not already broken, so the fact that most consumers are going to accept the basic elements of your overall design is something that would ensure that you make the most out of your site without having to spend excess money. Offer your site in multiple languages. A common misconception made by UK web development companies is the assumption that most people on the internet speak English. This is actually completely untrue. Just like English is not the only language in the real world, the internet is a very similar reality as well. In truth, only about 25% of the world's population speaks English on the internet, so having a site that has been created entirely in English is probably going to end up alienating a lot of these people. A much better option would be to go for multiple languages so that you can ensure that your site is able to handle traffic from different parts of the world. Perhaps one of the biggest markets on the internet that does not speak English can be found in China. Chinese sites get a huge amount of traffic. After all, China has the single largest population in the world and people there usually don't speak any language but Chinese. If you want to target this market, you need to keep in mind that both Cantonese and Mandarin are spoken quite widely in the country. So if you want to make your site accessible to everyone from this country, you need to incorporate both languages into your web design. One thing to keep in mind while designing your site to provide the option for multiple languages is that code tends to change because your design is going to have to be different. Chinese tends to look a lot more cramped than English, but that's just the way the language is, and adding spaces and the like is probably just going to make your site look terrible to a Chinese viewer. Other languages that you can potentially incorporate are Arabic, which would gain you the rather large region that is the Middle East, along with Hindi since India has the second largest population in the world. Outsource to local professional. If you truly want your site to be suitable for a particular region, hiring professionals from that region is the best way to do it. After all, People living in a particular country are going to be a lot more capable when it comes to creating a site that would fill the requirements of potential customers you could get from that country. There are certain nuances to regional differences that outsiders would be far less likely to understand, which means that local talent can really help you bridge the divide. An added bonus is that people living in these markets are often going to be less expensive because most of the markets that don't speak English also have a lower cost of living, which drives down the price that would be demanded by the talent you hire. All in all, while this process is going to be rather grueling and tiresome, it is also important to keep in mind the enormous benefits you are going to get as well. Thank you.